What's up, everybody? Truth Seeker here. This video is brought to you by my tip jar. If you'd like to be able to tip me a buck or two, please click the link in the description below. And thank you to all the supporters that's already tipping me. You guys are the only ones that's keeping this channel alive right now. So thank you very much. Now moving on to the story. It says, according to reports, Lisa Page was cooperative, informative, and answered many questions that Peter Strzok didn't. Congress held a closed-door session Friday with Lisa Page that nearly lasted 5 hours. U.S. Representative Mark Meadows had been among Page's harshest critics heading into the session, but he said her cooperation speaks well of her, according to The Hill. Meadows said he thinks the American people would be happy with Friday's transcribed interviews. She's been willing to help in the spirit of transparency. We've certainly learned additional things today, Meadows said. The GOP-led probe is a joint investigation run by the chairman of the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees. Page, who defied a subpoena Wednesday, would have been held in contempt of Congress had she not appeared at Friday's session. In the private testimony, she primarily answered questions about text messages with Peter Strzok that allegedly showed bias against then-candidate Donald Trump, the New York Post reported. Meadows called Page a credible witness as he walked out of the hearing, the report said. There is new information, he told the reporters, and that information is credible. She's doing her best to help us find the truth, and I think in ways she's been falsely accused of not being willing to cooperate. U.S. Representative John Ratcliffe of Texas was more concerned with the corroborating Page's account with that of Strzok. The overriding issues for us today is, will her testimony match up with his testimony, Ratcliffe said, according to The Hill. A Democratic congressional source told The Hill that 2 hours into the interview, Page did not appear to have contradicted Strzok's testimony in any way. Lawmakers would not speak about the content of the session, but they believe a transcript of the interview should be made public. U.S. Representative Matt Gaetz, a frequent and vocal critic of the FBI, questioned the Bureau's presence at the private testimony. Lisa Page is not an FBI employee, but the FBI was here providing counsel and giving her direction as to which questions to answer or not answer, and there is a question as to the property that before the House, Gaetz said, according to The Hill. But he said he also found Page to be more credible than Strzok. I didn't agree with her characterization of every text message and every piece of evidence, Gaetz said, as he left the House hearing, but we did not see the smug attitude from Lisa Page that we saw from Peter Strzok. Page did not answer any reporters' questions as she walked out of the session. She is due back Monday afternoon for another closed-door testimony, the Washington Post reported. The same Democratic congressional source told The Hill that Page appeared less assertive and confident in her answers than Strzok was. Since the probe is led by GOP members, Democrats see it as a partisan sham designed to undermine special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into potential collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia in the 2016 election.
Lisa Page, one half of the anti-Trump FBI lovebirds, taking to Capitol Hill a day after Peter Strzok for her own closed-door grilling.
GOP lawmakers revealing that Page has given them new information and that she's cooperating with their questioning.
So what implications could this have for Strzok and the Russia investigation? Florida Congressman and gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis joins us now. Sir, thanks for being here with us. An interesting reaction to Lisa Page's comments on the Hill. It wasn't all negative. There was actually some positivity coming out of Republican mouths with regard to what she said.
Well, it's because she was actually willing to answer questions. I mean, with Peter Strzok, as you guys saw on national TV, as we had seen when we did the deposition of him, it was like pulling teeth. He was always very coy. He didn't want to really answer a lot of the questions he claims he wanted to, but said he just wasn't able to. So the cooperation was much different. Mm-hmm. And I think when she comes back on Monday, hopefully we'll get all the rest of the questions answered. And I think Strzok's testimony really left a lot of Americans frustrated because he was not honest, he was not credible in explaining his actions, and yet he's still on the payroll of the FBI. Yeah. Why is he still getting a paycheck from the American taxpayer? He should not be there anymore. He doesn't have credibility, and he needs to move on. And obviously, he may have to face additional justice beyond that, but it's just amazing that he's still there.
It sure is, and we will get to that in a second. But is Lisa Page on Monday, is she testifying publicly? If not, should she?
No, it's going to be continuation of the deposition. And look,
there's something that's
so
much more powerful about public. I mean, Peter Strzok being out in the open, exposing himself for who he is. is powerful. It's cleansing for the American public. Is there any way to get maybe the candor of Lisa Page before cameras?
Well, I've been a big supporter of releasing the transcripts if you're going to do a deposition. The difference between the deposition, Pete, is as you saw at the hearing, I mean, it can kind of become a circus-like atmosphere. You have 5 minutes to question. In a deposition, you actually let people develop a line of questions. And so it's just a different format, but sometimes that format is better. But I think at a minimum, the transcript needs to be released to the American people. Absolutely.
Congressman, you mentioned that Peter Strzok is still on the FBI payroll. He also still has a security clearance. Who is to blame for that? Is that the Trump administration?
The FBI?
The FBI? Who is to blame for that?
Well, I think we need to know he had the security clearance at least for the purpose of reviewing documents to prepare for the hearing. And so I think what we just need to figure out was it a limited clearance just so he could prepare himself? That's one thing. If he still has his security clearance after all this, that's obviously a huge problem because there are people who have their security clearances yanked for doing far less than Peter Strzok has done, and it just kind of feeds into this thing. He still has a job. Why isn't he being held accountable to the extent that he should based on his conduct? So the FBI needs to answer that question.
How could he be held accountable? I mean, watch his answers, you watch his non-answers, how do you hold a guy like Peter Strzok accountable?
Well, in the Congress, if witnesses are just non-responsive, I mean, we can move to hold them in contempt of Congress. That's a legitimate use of our authority. I've been arguing we needed to use that and other tools. We have not necessarily had a critical mass. Maybe the frustration out of Strzok, people will say, okay, we had these 10 questions that you hemmed and hawed about. You're in front of the Congress. We want answers. If not, we're going to hold you in contempt. If you have a sanction, then people will comply. But if they know they can get away with it, like Lois Lerner did with the IRS, then they're going to continue to do this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Ron DeSantis, Congressman from Florida, maybe a future governor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. So back to the question of, do you think Lisa Page actually flipped on Peter Strzok? And the odds are actually pretty good that she did. This is my rough guesstimate of how I'm seeing this so far. She was subpoenaed to appear to Congress on Wednesday and denied, saying I didn't want to do that. To me, that seems like she was trying to buy a little more time. Why was she trying to buy a little more time? I think because she was trying to talk to Peter Strzok about what they were supposed to talk about. And I think the whole entire time, Peter Strzok is planning to just throw her under the bus. I mean, that's technically what they already did. They pretty much made her the homewrecker and the snobby lady that was talking crap about Trump, you know, and they praise Peter Strzok and then they speak down about her. And I find this kind of funny because I already know how this is going to work. For one, she was Peter Strzok's mistress, and of course, because of all this hitting the fan like this, they obviously broke up. So now Peter Strzok is pretty much trying to do whatever he can to kiss up back to his wife, and he's literally demeaning Lisa Page this whole entire time. But he's not also just doing that with his wife, but he's doing it with the FBI, he's doing it with Congress, and I think she realizes that, and I don't think she's going to sit there and take it. So I think now they're having these closed-door hearings. She's actually fully cooperating. She's not saying, I'm not going to answer this. She's not doing none of that. She's actually answering every single question that Peter Strzok was stonewalling Congress with. And so they're saying now that they got a lot more new information and also got to clarify a lot of things that they thought. And apparently she did so good that they wanted to continue this on Monday, because I think there's still so much more for her to tell, and I think she had to gather some evidence. But Peter Strzok doesn't even realize that he's actually the fall guy on this. What he doesn't really understand is he is about to get thrown under the bus by his own FBI. They're about to do whatever they can to try to claim whatever credibility that they even have left. They're going to do this. I mean, look how fast they let Andrew McCabe go. You don't think they'll do that to Peter Strzok? All I know is this is going to get really, really interesting, and I hope they do release the transcripts, because the whole world needs to really know what these people were actually doing the whole entire time of this investigation. They need to know that this is where their tax dollars got wasted. And they also need to know this is why Hillary Clinton is still walking free right now. We're not going to have any more updates on this, though, until after the Monday hearing. So I'll definitely do a follow-up with you guys on whatever else I learned new on that. But what do you guys think about all this? Definitely leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
The ICIG and they can document that. But you were given that information and you did nothing with it. And one of the things I found most egregious with Mr. Horowitz's testimony, and by the way, Horowitz got a call 4 times by someone wanting to brief him, leaving messages telling him about this, and he never returned the call. He had 500 pages of bias that he gave us, and then he threw a bone to the Democrats and said, but we can't find bias. And let me tell you, when you have text messages, Mr. Strzok, the way you do, saying the things you did, you'd been better off coming in here and say, look, that was my bias. And you kind of get around to that a little bit when you say, hey, you know, everybody's got political views. Those are called biases, and we all have them. And you have come in here and said, I had no bias. And you do it with a straight face. And I watched you in the private testimony you gave. And I told some of the other guys, he is really good. He's lying. He knows, we know he's lying. And he could probably pass a polygraph. It's amazing.
Mr. Chairman.
No, this is my
Mr.
time.
Chairman, I'm sorry.
It needs to
point
be
of order.
paused.
This point of order.
No.
The gentleman will state his point of order.
A member of this committee just asserted that this witness, who is under oath and a former agent of the FBI, lied. There is no evidence that. I ask him to withdraw it.
I do not withdraw it. He is not a member of Congress. It's not a violation of the rule. And just as you have been expressing bias through your members about what a hero
There is not a single person on this committee who has ever characterized a witness
Gentleman
as
from
lying.
Rhode Island.
Gentleman,
it's my time.
That's a disgrace.
Gentleman from Rhode Island will
Praise
suspend.
him. No, the disgrace
Mr.
is what this man has done.
The gentleman
to our
from
justice
Texas will suspend for a moment.
There is the disgrace. And it won't be recaptured anytime soon because of the damage you've done to the justice system. And I've talked to FBI agents around the country. You've embarrassed them. You've embarrassed yourself. And I can't help but wonder when I see you looking there with a little smirk, how many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous.
The credibility of a witness
Shame
is
on
always
you,
an
Mr.
issue.
Mr. Chairman, please.
Have you, Mr. Chairman, this is intolerable harassment of the witness.
What's wrong with that? You need your medication.
The gentleman controls the time.
I ask that the witness be permitted to respond to
He
that
will be
despicable assertion.
He will be permitted
Did you
to
ever
respond. The
talk
gentleman
to
controls
Hillary
the time.
Clinton during your investigation, besides the one questioning you mentioned, before that or after that to this day?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman will state his point of order.
It is, I think, against the rules of the House for a member of the committee to be impugning the character of a witness.
It is not.
He should ask questions to elicit. The purpose of this hearing is to elicit information. He should ask questions to elicit information. He should not be impugning the character of the witness.
The gentleman is advised the rules of the House only are directed to members of the House and the President of the United States.
Therefore, in other words, it is okay to impugn the character of witnesses in any way whatsoever?
Well, listen, I've heard many members on your side of the aisle impugn character of somebody who is covered by the rules of the House. But the gentleman, the gentleman has 20 seconds left. The clock will be turned back on, and he can complete his time, and then the witness can respond.
So if you talk to Hillary Clinton, other than the time she was examined in front of the witnesses?
No.
So after throwing away what you have with all the bias you have, you've never even gotten a thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman may respond.
Sir, well, that's quite a set of statements.
Mr. Chairman, I did not finish with a question.
The gentleman,
there was no question asked.
Mr. Chairman, he's been given the opportunity to respond.
The gentleman will suspend. The time of the gentleman has expired, and as I've indicated
the rules
earlier,
of our hearings are if there is a question asked during the time, the witness may respond to the question after the time.
The witness is going to be allowed to respond briefly.
That's a new rule.
Sir, first, I assure you,
question.
Under oath, as I spoke also during my interview a week or two ago, I have always told the truth. The fact that you would accuse me otherwise, the fact that you would question whether or not that was the sort of look I would engage with in a family member who I have acknowledged hurting goes more to a discussion about your character and what you stand for and what is going inside you.
It's
and the
to
integrity
your
of man.
credibility, and
while
you lost your
both-
credibility.
Both
I-
individuals.
while I
You've
doubt it-
lost your credibility.
While
That's
I doubt
the
it
problem.
plays well
Gentleman
to
from
America,
Texas will,
I'm not sure it plays
the
well.
gentleman from Texas will suspend. The witness has had ample opportunity to express his feelings about that, and now the chair recognizes the
Mr.
gentleman
Chairman,
from
there is
Florida,
a discussion about the representative's first assertion about what the ICIG said that I would like to respond to.
Very briefly.
Very briefly, I have no recollection of that conversation. I can tell you I am not a computer forensic expert. I can tell you that every allegation that we had, and ICIG was a great and close partner, every allegation that we had, whether from them or anybody else, was forwarded to experts who looked at it. The scores and scores of servers and BlackBerries and emails and everything we got were combed over carefully by the FBI's experts to see if there's any indicia of intrusion.
But you don't recall
The things
going
you're saying,
over
sir,
those emails, correct?
Much of what
Gentlemen
you're
will
saying, I
suspend.
have no idea what you're talking about, and frankly,
And
this
the
strike
witness
is
will
wrong.
suspend as well.
I do not know what you're talking about.
That
you
is
just
enough.
can't let a witness
The-
go on forever.
the-
when the fact is, you never did anything
Chairman,
about those.
order.
Correct?
Regular order.
You didn't do anything
Was-
about it.
Sir, if there was a lead, I gave it to the team unequivocally.
The gentleman-
there was nothing along
Mr.
the lines
Strzok,
that
you will
was not addressed.
suspend.
Well, that'll come out.
Mr. Gomer,
enough.
you will suspend.
Please subscribe to our channel, like our video,